All right, everybody. Welcome to the Backstage Beat Tent. My name is Eddie Huffman. I write for the News and Record and write a lot about music in this area. I am here today with members of Alash and Sean. I believe you work closely with the group, produce them.
Yeah, I've been living in Tuva for 15 years and touring with Ian and Body Dorju, as well as Ian Olsam, the other member of Alash, for about 12 of those years. So we're real happy to be here in Greensboro and just pretty happy with the reception we've gotten.
How many of you have seen them perform so far?
Thank you.
Beautiful, otherworldly music. And tell me a little bit about Tuva. It's between Siberia and Mongolia. Is that correct?
Yeah, Tuva's Siberia is like a region, and it's actually larger than the United States. So Tuva's in the southern part of Siberia. It's a part of Russia as a country. So everybody in the band has Russian passports. When we come to the States, we have to get visas in Russia. You know, we have to get U.S. visas. And it's just north of Mongolia. And so it shares some things culturally with Mongolia, but really Tuva has its own culture, it has its own language, its own history, and for those of you that heard it at the folk festival, the music of Tuva is unique, and you don't find it anywhere else, and it's just some really it's so beautiful that it caused me to leave America 15 years ago and live in Siberia. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about the evolution of the music. Has it been around for centuries? How far back does it go?
Mongolya'nın gündezinin değeri aslında var böyle sabah değeri oldu. Bu şu üyetipten ustaların kajan zedeyim 10 lirada yüzden kaldırıp tağıp olup duruyorsan sonunda kajandan da cedirgezinden da hep üyetipten sotur. Ama yaşut bir şey yok otur. Bizler Goje'ye daşlarlar, bana bizlerin bile bizler o zaman koyumuzda kutlusu olmalıyız. Bizlerge Attık yerine kılmıyoruz. Oğuzla bizlerge kan taybırlar çoğalıp duruyoruz. Tova çoğun macınlar o koydusu da tutuşma olmuş oldu da koydusunu ünlüyle o kendin ağaca hattı geldi. O buran cüyü oldu. Hancadır. Boza bizler.
Everybody get that? This is Body Dorju Ondar. Body Dorju Ondar. All the members of Alash are some of the finest musicians of their generations. And Body's telling us that the origins of the music are ancient. We don't know, exactly how old they are. There are old rune stones that you find in Tuva from 1,500 years ago that mention people practicing this art. And then, of course, when you think about it as a Tuvan person, this is the music of the ancestors of the Tuvan people, and it goes back a very, very, very long time in history, before people invented writing, maybe even before people invented language. So Tuvan people, Body is telling us, that are very indebted to all of the generations before them, to their ancestors, because Tuvan people are very aware of what a special, amazing musical gift that they have, and that has come from such a long time ago. And if you ask about what the music is related to, what it comes from, the first thing that you look at is nature, the sounds of wind and the sounds of water. Yeah, that's a great idea. Ian is suggesting that he's going to sing for you one of the many different Tuvan styles. This is called Borbanadir, and this is a sound that comes, it's like a reflection of the sound of water. So it's inspired by and even kind of imitates the sound of water flowing in a little tiny mountain stream. So this is the style of Borbanadir.
자,
Alash is the name of a river, isn't that correct? Let's see. And talk a little bit about the themes of the music. I believe I saw the performance with the Fairfield Four and the other folks earlier. You were talking about horses and women, I believe, being a common theme in the song.
Yeah, you guys would probably agree, right? Horses and women are definitely a big theme. So we just heard IAM singing this beautiful, amazing vocal music from a time before people invented language that comes from nature. And it's really easy to think that when you hear this stuff that to our ears is so different, so exotic, you start to think that it's really serious stuff and that this is really deep stuff. And it is, in the sense that all music is deep, but then people ask us what the songs are about, and the thing is, this is country music. It's just from another country. And the songs are about fast horses and beautiful girls. All kinds of, it's not just that. There is a disproportionately large amount of songs that are about horses and women. But, songs about your homeland, songs about your mom, things, anything you could pick a country song or any kind of folk music being about, Tuvan people are singing about as well. There is just that special connection with horses because Tuvans are nomads traditionally, moving around 4 times a year. And even now in Tuva, we do have cities, we have a city and some villages, but there are still people that live in the nomadic way as well. And so horses are important, and nature is also important because you're living in nature all the time.
How westernized is what you do here? Are you going very much what you would do at home in Tuva, or is it a very different style of performance?
Çoğun da programı Özbekistan çok bizim botlarımızın bazı kulağa da oynarı salındık. O bizlerin angı hevir o 자 거긴 çözümler bazı eksperimenti bazı toplar observatör zamza demir turun basta barabanan deş ol üzerine koyuyoruz bazı oynayıp duruyoruz. Amca onun da oynayıp duruyoruz.
So yeah, we really don't change the program whether we're playing in Tuva or whether we're playing in the United States. We could go back to Tuva and have an Alash concert very much like the ones that you saw us performing this weekend at the festival. And actually in Tuva we do experiment more. We have a rock band that we get together. I mean, there's lots of rock bands in Tuva, but the members of Alash are playing with other experimental types of, involving the traditional music with bass guitars and drum sets and stuff. And our most recent album we did with a beatboxer with Showcase. So on this side we're doing experiments. Over in Tuva we're doing experiments. We're doing the traditional program over here, and we're doing the traditional program back home too. And as a matter of fact, it's not that the program doesn't ever change. We're working on material for our 4th album right now, so we're always developing new stuff. And yeah, our last album was released on Smithsonian Folkways just a couple weeks ago. So if you want to check that out, that's in the Smithsonian Folkways catalog. And of course, Smithsonian has a lot to do with everything going on here as well.
Let's see. Well, speaking of rock music, a DJ friend of mine said that he had heard that Jimi Hendrix was influenced by throat singing. Have you heard that?
That Jimi Hendrix was influenced by throat singing?
Don't know if it's true. Didn't know. Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix Frank Zappa was a big fan.
Oh.
Frank Zappa one time made a salad for Body Dorju when he was 9 years old. In the last years of Zappa's life, some of the first Tuvan musicians to start. At the time, the Soviet Union had just fallen, and so all of a sudden people realized what was going on in Tuva, and Zappa heard about this, and he met them, and he brought the Tuvans over to his home, and they had salad together, and Body was there, and he was 9 years old. If you look up the Zappa Tuvan salad party on YouTube, you can actually see video clips of that. So yeah, it's Hendrix. I think what you might have heard was when we first started writing, promo stuff for the band, the guys were listening to a lot of Jimi Hendrix, and so we might have been talking about how we listened to Jimi Hendrix and are influenced by him, and that somehow got flipped over.
Well, you were talking about Zappa. Did you both start as children? Did you start learning this style as children?
Yeah, I am. How old were you? 9, 10? I am was about 9 when he started. Body was like 4 years old, 5 years old. Body Dorju's from the same village as one of the most famous throat singers, Kongarol Andar, and he was a great teacher. And Body was, some of you might have seen the movie Genghis Blues. If you haven't, it's a really amazing movie to watch. It's about this blues man from America named Paul Pena goes over to Tuva 20 years ago, so there was like no internet and stuff. So people couldn't just like look at your Instagram feed and see what Tuva was like. And this cat just goes over there and he learned Tuvan throat singing. But because he was Body's teacher. Body started when he was 4 years old, and he was from the same village as this guy. So it's a thing that kids just get interested in, and they do.
Another thing I've wondered is just how much of a strain on the vocal cords is this style of singing? Is it something you have to sort of rest after singing for a long time, or?
Yeah, no, it's not at all harmful for your vocal folds. It's, the members of Alash, of course, are professionals. I mean, it's just like if all of you have a profession or a sport that you do, and somebody who doesn't do that all the time would have a hard time doing it as much as you do. Whether it's typing or riding your bike or driving a cab or something, or yelling at people or whatever it is. And so for the members of Alash, they're in very good shape as far as the voice, so they don't have to rest very much. But even if you're an amateur throat singer, especially if you're a Tuvan and you're growing up doing this, it's very natural. I mean, I know that sounds weird to you guys because it's not something you hear in Greensboro all the time, but it's all about learning to control your muscles, and you don't have to force them a lot. You have to have good control over them, and then over time, it's like playing tennis or something. You're working on that backspin or whatever, and your muscles get stronger, but they're little tiny muscles. So yeah, it doesn't hurt, and Alash, sometimes we'll do 3 sets in a day, and it's okay.
Let's see, and are you full-time musicians? Is this your only profession?
Our lives are only music, and we are Alash, and in Tuva we also all play in the Tuvan National Orchestra. So back home in Tuva as well, just 100% full-time music.
Could you talk a little about the instruments you play as you sing?
Angang bisa koltuk gençler yaş okul artık yaş onu tek kızım attıran kızlık görüyoruz. Artarı toşkundu ilgili işte kengirge dingur deyişiyor diyor. Kengirge shoor ye.
Shoor osunda homestarımızda pek koyanlık yerlerdi oldu.
Yeah, we have a lot of instruments. We have instruments that are made of wood and skin and hair because this is coming from a nomadic place, so all the instruments are natural material. We have a plucked instrument called a dashpalur and a bowed two-stringed instrument called an igil. We have different kinds of jaw harps called humus. We have a big old drum called a kengirge and a flute called a shoor, and there's a whole lot of others. Tuvan instruments, we have lots and lots of them, and that's important to remember. Those of you who saw Alash's program know, but those of you who didn't, sometimes you say, oh, they're throat singers from Tuva, and you think that's all that the music is about, and it's not. It has really beautiful instruments as well.
Well, I am out of questions. I wonder if maybe anybody in the audience has a question? All right. Go first.
Right, I know what to ask. I believe it was played. Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Anna Ismailinov, and I've seen all of your performances here.
Thank you.
There is one instrument that you play. It's like a tube that you played out of the side of your mouth. It was like. I have no idea what it is.
That's called a shoor. It's a flute. It's just a hollow tube, and he sticks it in his mouth like this.
On the side.
And it's similar to. Yeah, you just it's all using a special embouchure. It's just a hollow tube, and it has some holes in it. So it's a very basic instrument. There are similar instruments in other cultures around Tuva. In Mongolia, it's called the shoor. In Caucasia, it's called the sibuzgı. In Turkey and Persia, it's called a ney. You know, it's very similar to that kind. In Bashkortostan, it's called a kuray. I'm totally not making any of that up. That's all true information, by the way. I'm not just making up words because I know it probably sounds like that to some of you. But yeah, that's called a shoor, and it's a flute. He does a special embouchure where he's blowing over the top of it with his sticks. Yeah, he has tongue lips.
Yeah, this guy.
Let me tell. We on, Ron? Okay. Sean, can I ask you one more question before you take it back to the audience?
Sure.
Just talk a little bit more about how you came to move to Tuva. What were you doing before that?
I was, well, I'll give you the official version. No, I was a young American doofus, and I heard Tuvan music in 1999, and I got fascinated with it. I was a musician myself, playing different musical instruments, and got fascinated by it and started to try to teach myself how to throat sing. That's a common reaction that people have to Tuvan music, and that led to me over the course of the next 4 years. I got fired from my job, I got kicked out of my apartment, and my girlfriend broke up with me because I was obsessed with Tuvan music. And eventually I got a grant to go to Tuva. 4 years later, I was a bike messenger in Chicago, and I was practicing my throat singing in Chicago on the streets because nobody can hear you because the buses are so loud and everything. And a friend of mine died, and at his wake, another good friend of ours that I hadn't seen in ages showed up and said he was about to go off to Siberia on something called the Fulbright grant, and he said that the people at the Fulbright they will love that, and you should propose to them to go to because by that time I'd gotten okay at throat singing. I mean, at least for a white dude from Milwaukee, and so I applied for the grant. It was 2002. I had to learn Russian. I had to pass all these tests. I had to fly to New York City and sing for the Jedi Council in like the top of the UN building. And I passed all the things, and they gave me the money, and I went out there, and that's when I met Buddy and Ian and a lot of other musicians, and I became the apprentice and student of the Tuvan National Orchestra, which had just formed at that time. And I ended up learning Tuvan language, and I stayed there and got married to a Tuvan woman who's she's still Tuvan, and she's still my wife. and we have 5 beautiful kids. And yeah, I worked in the orchestra for the next 12 years, and now I work at the cultural center as well, and you know, do crazy things in the name of promoting Tuvan culture, including traveling around with Alash. With Alash, my job is very easy. I just manage the band and I do the front of house sound. That's it. That's really easy. I don't even really have to interpret for you guys. Everybody in Alash speaks a lot better English than they used to. So yeah, that's like the last 15 years of my life in a nutshell. But yeah, you know, it's not happens every day. You had a question there in the hat, yeah.
Thank you so much, and beautiful sound. Actually, I have 2 questions that answer very briefly. First question is, do female members of the community practice tradition? And the second question is, I heard Mongolia has similar tradition called the Humai. Is it similar or some slightly different tradition?
Cevap kız söyleydi o zaman
Японияда өзі қыз көмежден пара қорылмақ тұрым. Абсың үйеріп те өзі қыз кежеге қорылды ұрған
So the first question is about females practicing throat singing. In Tuva now, there are women that practice throat singing. There's nothing anatomically different about a woman than a man that would prevent them from throat singing. However, earlier in times in Tuva, it was considered that could be bad for a woman to do, or sort of, there were various taboos surrounding it in earlier times in Tuva. I don't take that as like a hard and fast thing though, because it depends on who you talk to, but it was a little bit more, it was not encouraged, I guess, for many families in Tuva. And then what was the second question about Mongol Humi, right? Yeah.
몽골에서 그때 좀 안 보이는데 한 몽골에서 그때 있는데 그거가 바로 못 들어나. 아마전 도전 2жылda, 거의 도전 1жылda 인구가 көмейді ойна чығы жеп тұребеғазы Моғолдан жоқ болған тозан 2жылда симбозин бір дар еттіп тұрды жан болса Моғолда кейген бар. Мен ол тозан 2жылда Ташқыстың шоғыласына өйрене білеш Моғолдар көмейді, Моғол көмей деп біздерген діже шымен жоқ тұрған ама. Оғын күл болғанда ол жерлер егілей берген болып тұры. Ол сонда ол жерлер Моғол көмей дейсің аңғыла берген болып тұрады ама. Ам жоғымыз тілі қожа келмей жүктеп жорағынды аймақ ұлдырағыз төмей болып тұрар ама. Ам Моғол көмей деп жоқ, қолды ола көмей дейір ғана біздің білдірісті олғыры. Біздің ол көмей сағыт ол дәмесенің еліңе аған жатыр көмей сағыттың жастың бір ең қол жазды тыл ол болып тұры біздің талығыз ама.
And as far as Mongolian Humi is concerned, Fukume is a name that people use for throat singing. It's a name of one of the ways that Tuvan people perform music. And it's a Tuvan word, Humi. And the question is about, does Mongolia have a similar tradition? And the answer is, Badi Dorju is explaining very well about how up until about 1992, you never heard anything about Mongol Humi. It didn't exist. And when they started having throat singing symposia in Tuva, starting in 1992, then a few years later you start to hear about Mongols doing this. And you know, Mongolia has its own beautiful traditional music, but even the name that they use for it comes from Tuvan. And there's actually really this whole huge cultural appropriation issue with Mongolia and Tuva right now, which is why we really have to stress that Tuva is this place that has its own culture, because you know, in the first symposium in 1992, there was nobody there from Mongolia, first of all, that was throat singing. Tuva is only known, the only reason most of you know about Tuva is because of its music. There are 200,000 people in Tuva. You know, that's like a county in North Carolina. And I don't know the name of any county in North Carolina because none of y'all throat sing. No, but Mongolia is a country. Mongolia exists on the world map, and as Badi is telling us, they started to realize that this music is really super interesting, and Mongolia definitely has similar cultural stuff going on. You know, we don't want to say Mongols and Tuvans are totally different. There is a shared culture, but the real secret of Tuvan Kume is what Badi's telling us. The real secret of Tuvan throat singing is in the language. And the language of Mongolia and Tuva are totally different. They're as different as English and Italian. So they're quite different. And that's a really important point to make, because everywhere we go, a lot of people go away and they say, oh yeah, I saw this Mongolian dance. You know, and when your people are only known in the world because of their music, it becomes not a good thing when somebody else is saying that your music is theirs. So